Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa barak ala al-ashraf al-anbiya wa mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama taslima kathira. Amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah. We continue with where we left off from a previous lesson. The previous lesson, we discussed some of the affairs of the companions. Now, and of course, it was followed on from the other objectives and what we mentioned previously in terms of the other usul, and from the usul that the Jama'ah is based upon, or the basis rather of those of the Jama'ah, is the generation of the companions. And this particular generation, the companions, and they are from the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then those that followed them from the Tabi'een. And first and foremost, to mention what is the definition of a companion. Definition of a companion is what? The one that met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam
as a Muslim,
believed in him,
and died upon Islam, even if you apostated between.
Died upon Islam, even if you apostated between. Now, I mentioned some masail in relation to that. So I don't remember the masail that we mentioned, some of the issues that we mentioned surrounding that definition. Whether it be masail regarding individuals or just masail regarding the definition itself. And I remember some of the masail that we mentioned regarding the definition.
Individuals who lived in the same time but never met the Prophet.
The individuals that lived in the same time but never met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they believed in him. Now, for example, who? Najashi. Now, so Najashi, he met the companions, but he did not meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence, he was regarded as what then? A Tabi'i. Now, from after Tabi'in. We also mentioned the mas'ala regarding who? Isa alayhi salam. And we said, and we asked to pose the question, is he regarded as being from amongst the companions? Now, and what was the conclusion we came to?
It's not really a question. He's a prophet.
Is a prophet?
There's no point in going to us.
There's no benefit.
So yeah, so he falls in the criteria of a companion. So if we were to talk about it in terms of strictly the definition, then yes, we take companion. However, the discussion doesn't really is kind of a discussion which is devoid of benefit, or it's a discussion which is not essentially needed. Why? Because he is a prophet. Na'am alayhi salam. So he's a prophet, so of course he's of a higher station. And also, what is the importance of knowing who the companions are and the definition of who the companions are? What are its importance? And how does that relate to it being obsolete and knowing whether Isa alayhi salam is a companion or not? What's important to know the companion? Why? What's this important?
Because we gather our deen from them.
We take our deen from them in what manner?
They narrated from the Messenger of Allah.
So in terms of narration, now, so if we need to know who a companion is to know the strength of the narrators. Now, so if we know a companion is a narrator in the chain, in the riwayah, just by the fact that he's a companion, yeah, automatically we say what? What's the correct creed about them? Is that what? They're all trustworthy. Thiqat. Now, they're all trustworthy. Likewise, as well, linked to that is that from the correct belief is that we have to hold them in high regard. And from the hold them in high regard is to have that belief that they are trustworthy. Now, however, if we're talking about Isa alayhi salam, then we have to hold him in high regard anyway due to the fact that he's a prophet. Now, he's a prophet from the Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of Allah's prophets and messengers. And so we have to hold him in high regard anyway due to that. So him being a companion or not is not of any real benefit in discussing it from that bab. As for in terms of riwayah, then also it's not something which is significant or whether we discuss him as being a companion or not, because he has no riwayah, he has no narrations. There's no narrations where an individual narrates from Isa alayhi salam. So due to that, we say that now he falls into the definition, however, is not of any, is an obsolete understanding anyway. So, as for the companions, then what is the correct creed in relation to the companions? Just mentioned. They're all thiqat. Na'am, they're all thiqat. They're all trustworthy. And the one that curses them essentially has done what?
To attack the religion.
Attack the disbelief and attack the religion. Now,
Indirectly attack the Prophet.
now, so it's an indirect attack upon the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the one that makes sub of the Sahaba, makes curses the companions. Likewise as well, why is it that we can state that the one that makes sub of Sahaba, its action in itself, irrespective of whether we say about individuals, but the action itself is an action of kufr, the one that curses the companions, whether it be individuals or whether it be a group of them, whether it be all of them in totality. Why do we say that the one that does so has disbelief, or this is actual disbelief rather?
Allah said, radiallahu anhu.
Well, Allah Ta'ala has praised him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has praised them directly. Now by way of statement, radiallahu anhu. Allah is pleased with them, in totality. So anyone that rejects that, then no doubt this is a rejection of something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed us of. So it's takdeeb of the Quran. That is rejection and denial of the Quran, which no doubt is kufr. Now, just as, for example, if we used to say, مثلا, the one that rejects the obligation of salah, this is kufr. Because it's takdeeb of that which Allah has informed us of, the obligation of the salah. And so Allah has informed us of the correct creed in relation to the companions. The one that rejects that, then this is action of kufr. The one that is denied that is action of kufr. And in terms of, we said that this is from the action of the enemies of Islam. Why is it the case that those that oppose Islam, their intent would be to attack the companions? Why? It's a way of attacking the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, what?
It's a way of separating us from the narrations.
Separating us from the narrations. Now, separating us from the narration. How though? How is that done in a practical sense?
They put doubt on what the Sahaba narrated.
Now, if you put doubt upon the companions themselves by way of cursing them, speaking ill of them, now and make a tanakus of their station, to degrade them and their status, then by way of that you will seek to degrade that which they come with, the narrations from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, so if you bring about doubt upon them as individuals, then of course you also bring about doubt upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or doubt upon the narrations that come from him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is no different from those actions where you find that the people, when they speak about those that are conveyors of truth, whether it be from the Anbiya, whether it be from the companions, whether it be from the scholars, now the Imām scholars, that rather than discuss the message that they've come with, the haqq, and seek to dispel, if they believe it to be batil, seek to try to dispel that, what they will attempt to do is speak about the individuals and throw doubt upon the individuals as people. Now, and doubt upon their credibility of those that could disseminate the truth. Hence why when they said about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was a sahir, or he was majnoon, or he was a kahin. What they said about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that he was a sorcerer. Or what they said about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was that he was a soothsayer, or that which they said about him that he was majnoon. So rather than, if they believed his message of Tawheed to be batil, rather than refute the affair of Tawheed itself, which they're not able to do, they found themselves speaking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam bidhatihi, yani him specifically as an individual. And this is continuous. Wallahu a'lam. We mentioned as well a group of individuals that are well known for this, where they, in terms of their da'wah, in order to harm Islam, they will seek to attack the companions. And we mentioned, who are they? Orientalists. Mustashriqeen. And the Mustashriqeen, in order to attack Islam, and this is the ghaya of their talab. These individuals seek knowledge of Islam, whether they seek knowledge of Arabic, seek knowledge of when it comes to Ustādh Hadith, seek knowledge of the Hadith itself, seek knowledge of Usul al-Fiqh, yani the umur that you'll find the Tulab al-Ilm, the Muslim Tulab al-Ilm studying. They seek knowledge in this in order to try and find deficiencies and refute Islam itself. To try and find deficiencies so that they can refute Islam itself, wiyadhu billah. And no doubt from the individuals that they make a real focus upon are the companions. Because they want to throw doubt upon the states of the companions and degrade the states of the companions so that they are able in that regard to throw doubt upon that which they're transmitting. And they're not transmitting anything except the Sunnah. And so, if they throw doubt upon the Sunnah, then, as we mentioned in the beginning, Islam is the Sunnah and the Sunnah is Islam. So this is the tariqah, this is their intent. Allah Ta'ala. Is that clear? Now, so, we have our next point today, which I believe is point number 4. Point number 4. So, we don't have the Arabic to read it. Well, I can see who's got Arabic with it, rather than say your names. Faddal Abbas. And they call it Umar. Call it Umar. Salam. لا أرى لأحد في ضلالة
ركبها حسبها هدى ولا في هدى تركه حسبه ضلالة
وقد بينت
الأمور وثبتت الحجة وانقطع العذر.
No. And English, صوت إسماعيل.
Excuse for anyone going astray thinking that he is upon guidance, nor for abandoning guidance thinking it is misguidance, since the affairs have been made clear and the proof established and the excuse cut off.
No.
That is because the Sunnah and the Jama'ah have consolidated and safeguarded all of the religion. It has been made clear to the people, so it is upon the people to comply and follow.
No. جزاكم الله خير. So this is the statement of Umar ibn Khattab. Naam. And this is found in the statement itself is found in the Ibana of Ibn Battah. And this narration sometimes is also narrated from al-Awzā'i. There's also a narration that is sometimes narrated by al-Awzā'i. And it mentions, بَلَغَنِي an Umar. It's reached me from Umar. it reached me from Umar. What would that say about the narration? If he says it reached me from Umar. There's munqati' now. There's a breakage in the chain. However, essentially the statement is thabit an Umar radiyallahu anhu. Now, and so essentially the statement, as was mentioned, that there's no excuse for anyone when it comes to a misguidance that they've fallen into, that they've embarked upon, with them regarding it as being guidance, and not for anyone that has left off guidance due to the fact that they regard it as being misguidance. For indeed, that all of the affairs have been clarified and explained, and the proofs have been affirmed, and we have the proofs, the clear-cut evidences. So with that, the excuses have been cut off. With that, the excuses have been cut off. And so this is the call of Umar raḥimahullāh, يعني على عذر لأحد. First and foremost, he mentions لا عذر. يعني لا عذر. The word عذر here in the Arabic language is mansūb. It's mansūb. And it's because it follows the la. The word la. La here, does anyone know what kind of la this is? For those that are aware of the Arabic language, or some nahu. What is this la referred to as? La? Nafia lil? La. كان شيء كان تبحث عنه هناك. نعم. What do you know what it's referred to? أيوة. لا نافية للجنس. لا نافية للجنس. So this la is la nafiyah. So it's an absolute negation. So la nafiyah lil-jins, the word after it is mansūb. Just as you find in the Shahada, la ilaha. La ilaha. There's absolutely no deity. So it's absolute negation. So here, we have the statement of Umar regarding udhr, regarding the person being excused. He mentions la udhra, there's absolutely no excuse. Now, so he negates in the absolute sense any form of excuse for anyone. And this is due to the fact, as Shaykh Fawzān mentions, لأن الله بين الحق. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clarified the truth. وَفَصَّلَهُ فِي الْقُرْآنِ وَالسُّنَّةِ. And he has described it within the Quran and the Sunnah. فَلَا أُضْرَ لِأَحَدٍ حِينَئِذٍ فِي الضَّلَالَةِ. And so there's no udhr, there's no excuse there within for the one that falls into dalala, for the one that falls into misguidance. لأن التقصير جاء من قبله، يعني من قبله هو. So when a person is falling short in that regard, and the person is falling into dalala, he's falling short. That falling short is due to himself. Now, why? Because the haqq has been made clear. The haqq has been made clear by the kitab and the sunnah. So if the person is falling short, it's due to something that they've done themselves. حيث لم يبحث عن الحق. The person has not sought after the truth. ولم يسأل أهل العلم. فالضلال جاء من كبره. فهو الذي فرط. هو الذي فرط. So, this is due to the fact that the person did not search for the truth. And the person did not search for the truth. Now, I did not ask Ahlul Ilm. Then this dalal, this misguidance has come from him. And he was negligent in that regard. Now, a person cannot complain about falling into dalala, or a person complains about leaving off huda, leaving off guidance, whilst لم يكن يعني السؤال عنده, يعني he wasn't a person of questioning, he didn't question. Allah Ta'ala has commanded us with that. فَاسْأَلِ الْأَهْلُ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. If you ask people of remembrance, like the Ahlul Ilm, the scholars, if you do not know. So now if the individuals fall short in this, they don't ask, or they do not engage in talab al-ilm, then of course they cannot now say that they are free of blame. Thereafter, mentions يعني حسبها هدى. I mentioned the dalala, in the misguidance that the person regarded as being huda, yani guidance. فيه بيان أن الظن لا يغني من الحق شيئا. والله جل وعلا يقول وإنهم يصدونهم عن سبيلي ويحسبون أنهم مهتدون. And there's no, in reality, there's no value for what they're upon and their dhan. Whatever they believe, whatever they think, there's no value in relation to the truth. It cannot be weighed up against the truth. Al-haqq shay, the truth is one thing. وَظَنَّهُمْ كَلْ يُكُنْ شَيْءٍ آخَرٍ. And it's possible that their dhan, that which they perceive, is a whole complete other thing. A completely other direction. However, there's no benefit or there's no qima for it. No, there's no value to it. Just because we think something or we perceive something a particular way, we cannot now say, because I perceive it like this, it has to hold value. No, because in comparison to the haqq, and when it's weighed up against the truth is what takes precedence. The truth is what holds its weight. And Allah Ta'ala states, and they indeed, regarding the shayateen, block them away from the correct path. And that they regard themselves and they believe that they are guided. Now, فحسبانهم لا يشفع لهم لأنهم ليس لهم عذر. So there, in that which they think or that which their perception is, will not be of any avail to them. Will not intercede for them. So when they see the consequence, when we read the dunya or the akhirah, they see the consequence of their dalala, they cannot now say that it's just how I perceived it. Naam, this is how I perceived it to be. This is what I perceived the haqq to be. This is what I perceived huda to be, guidance to be. Naam, because in reality, they have no excuse. حيث لم يراجعوا الكتاب والسنة حتى يعرفوا الحق بالباطل. I didn't go back to the book of the Sunnah so that they could clarify and they came to know the truth from the falsehood. وإنما ركبوا أهواءهم ويحسبون أنهم مهتدون. Rather, that which they took from was their ahwa. Now, that which they took from was that which they desired. And they took that and they considered that to be the means of guidance. They regard themselves as being muhtadun. They regard themselves as being those that were guided. ومع هذا حكم الله بكفرهم وضلالهم فبمجرد أن الإنسان يحسب أنه على الحق لا يصير هذا عذرا له. And so, due to that, Allah Ta'ala mentions the hukm upon them and the ruling upon such individuals that they're upon, yani kufr. This is an act of disbelief and misguidance. And so them merely being people that regarded themselves to be upon the truth, then this has not become a reason for them or an excuse for them to traverse upon that way and be upon that. Naam. And this is what you find. How many times will you find an individual say that this is what the truth is? I believe this to be the truth. However, his understanding and the result of where he's come to that understanding is not based upon nusus. It's not based on text. You may say as a result, or when asked about it, put to task about it, why do you believe this? Why do you have this particular etiqad? You say, well, it makes sense. It says, it's mantaqi, it's logical, it makes sense. It makes sense to him. So it's his done. It's his perception. And so we have क़ā'idah, we have the क़ā'idah, as mentioned in Deen. حكم على شيء فرعا تصوره. حكم على شيء فرعا تصوره. So when you make a judgment upon something, when you come to a conclusion about something, this is derived from how it is perceived. How you perceive it. So a person may make that hukum. That hukum may be that this is huda, that this is guidance. That hukum may be that this is dalala, this is misguidance. This is derived from his perception. Now, so for example, if we're going to say, let's say, for example, that the celebration of his birthday is guidance, it's the truth. And you say, where did you come to that hukum? That this is guidance. This action in particular is guidance. And he will say, well, based on my perception, and what I understand, we love the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and so we should show our love to the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in every way we can. And from the things that we can do, I'll celebrate his birthday. That's his perception. So he has that perception which leads to that hukum, leads to that particular ruling that he's made. However, that perception based upon nusus, or is it based upon his hawa? No doubt it's something which is based upon his hawa and his ra'i. It's based upon his desires, it's based upon his opinion. What he regards as being logical. And so rather, when we understand hukm al-shay' far'an tasawwurihi, yani making a judgment upon something is derived from his perception, his perception has to be based upon nusus. When you perceive something, you have to be perceiving it with the text in mind, with the Quran in mind, with the Sunnah in mind. And then, thus after that, you make a particular judgment upon the affair. Now, thereafter, Shaykh Fawzān goes on to mention that the person does not have an excuse. إلا إذا لم يبلغه شيء من الوحي الإلهي المنزل على الرسول. منزل على الرسول أو على الرسل عفوا. لأن الواجب عليه أن يرجع إلى كتاب السنة ولا يبقى على ظنه وحسبانه وعلى ما يقوله له غيره إنه الحق فهذا ليس بعذر. And so, it's upon the individual. Now, if he does not have an excuse, that's the first thing. Except if something from the revelation has not reached him. Like something from the divine revelation has not reached him. That which has been revealed to the prophets and messengers. Because the obligation upon him is to return back. Obligation upon him is to return back to the book and the Sunnah. And he's not to rely solely upon his dhan. To rely solely upon whatever he perceives as an individual. Or what others say to him. Now, so he's not to rely upon what others say. Another person might say to you, this is the truth. Then this person does not have other. He's just relying upon another individual. وَقَلَّدْهُ يعني. And made taqleed of him. Blindly followed him. Rather, what is upon the individual is that he follows that which is the truth. Now, he follows that which is haqq. We understand from this as well, barakallahu feekum, is that there are examples where an individual maybe is the case where the haqq has not reached that individual. Now, the haqq has not reached that individual due to circumstance. or now due to circumstance that the haqq has not reached that individual. That's when we would say in this scenario, this is the istithna, this is the exception if we're talking about a person having an excuse. Anything outside of that, then the person will not have an excuse. So what's an example of a person of this scenario? Does anyone know? Or can anyone think of something?
Imām Abu Hanifa.
Now, have an excuse like?
So, as far as I'm aware, the 4 Imams, ʿaqīdah was one, and 3 of them, other than Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu.
No.
He basically thought that Iman is just, we understand it to be belief, speech and action.
Yes.
But he just held it to be, is it belief and, or speech and action, sorry.
No. And so why we say this is an excuse though? Or this is an example, but why are examples like this? What in the general sense, why would someone say that there's an excuse for someone that maybe has this particular belief like this, or any belief which is opposition to the haqq?
Maybe due to the geological location.
To the location?
Time in which they lived.
No. And so then what would be the excuse in that regard? The location, and then what is the barrier, if that makes sense, from them attaining the haqq?
Didn't reach them, but if it did reach them, then they would have accepted the truth.
No. So what you find in a lot of these cases is that the truth did not reach the individual, and that particular individual may have sought the truth from Ahlul Ilm that were in his proximity. So he sought the truth from the Ahlul Ilm in his proximity. And the Ahlul Ilm in proximity, there may have been people that had that particular belief which was not the correct and sound creed, but these were regarded as being Ahlul Ilm in their particular location. Now, as you mentioned, the geological location. And so that's what they had to take from. Now, and so this is not now an example of a person falling into tafrit, a person falling into tafrit. Yeah, they are lax or they're negligent when it comes to seeking of the truth. They went to Ahlul Ilm, but due to the time period that they were living in, or the location they were living in, the Ahlul Ilm that they had access to all shared a particular khalad when it came to a particular belief. Now, the example of that as well would be Shaykh Muhammad Aman al-Jami, as mentioned in his biography, raḥimahullāh, that he lived in a location in Habasha where he was surrounded by those that had the creed of the Ash'ariyah. Now, I'm surrounded by those that had the creed of the Ash'ariyah. And so, in terms of his tarbiyah, he was raised upon that particular tarbiyah. However, as soon as he left his land, he was able to leave that land and study with the scholars of the Saudiya, in the Mamlakat al-Arabiyyah to Saudiya, in Saudi Arabia. Then he learnt the correct creed and accepted the correct creed in relation to Asma wa Sifat. Not only did he accept the correct creed in relation to Asma wa Sifat, but then he ended up authoring many books in the affair of Tawheed, and specifically Asma wa Sifat. Now, raḥimahullāh. So this is an example of where we say that an individual, maybe he lived in a time or amongst people where they were not upon that which was correct. They had some deficiencies when it came to the usul, the correct creed. However, which was hoped of them is that if they had come across that creed, then they would have accepted it. An example of that, of someone that did come across the correct creed and eventually didn't accept it, in our contemporary times, is Shaykh Muhammad Aman al-Jami. Now, Wallahu a'lam. Now, thereafter, you have as well, the Shaykh Fawzān mentions the ayah, إِنَّهُمْ اتَّخَذُوا شَيَاطِينَ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَيَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. That indeed they took the shayateen as close allies from other than Allah, and they regarded themselves to be those that were upon guidance. The Shaykh mentions, انظر كيف اتخذوا الشياطين الإنس والجن أولياء من دون الله. So look how these individuals took the shayateen from ins, the shayateen from amongst the jinn, and took them as awliya from amna Allah. Na'am. And they followed them and regarded themselves as being upon guidance. Shaykh mentions, وَحَالَ الشَّيَاطِينَ تُرِيدْ لَهُمُ الْخَيْرِ. Do these shayateen want good for them? Are these particular shayateen, do they intend good for them? نعم. كما قال تعالى ومن يعش عن ذكر الرحمن نقيض له الشيطان فهو له قرين. And so whoever turns away from the remembrance of Rahman, the remembrance of Allah, then he'll be taken by these shayateen, and he will come to him as a close companion. He will be the one that whispers to him and blocks the path as a qarin. And Allah Ta'ala thereafter mentions وَإِنَّهُمْ يَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِي وَيَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. And they are those that close and block off the path and regard them as being upon guidance. So they regard those that are from the followers of the shayateen, regard them as being upon guidance. فَيَنْفَعْهُمْ ذَلِكَ وَلَا عُذْرَ لَهُمْ فِيهِ لِأَنَّهُمْ بَلَغَتْهُمْ دَعْوَةُ الرُّسُلِ فَلَمْ يَقْبَلُوهَا. And so, just because they regard themselves as being upon guidance, their perception is of no avail to them. Their perception that they're upon guidance is of no avail to them, because al-ibra bil-haqa'iq, that which takes significance, no doubt, are the realities. And the reality is that they have turned away from the truth. The reality is that they have taken a path of misguidance. The reality is that they've left off guidance for misguidance. Now, وإنما العذر يكون في المسائل الاجتهادية التي يسوغ فيها الاجتهاد. And so rather the udhr, if we're talking about a person being having an exception, or now being being excused rather, then this occurs when it comes to masail ijtihadiyya, in the affairs of ijtihad. This is the ijtihad of insan. So when an individual exerts himself in order to research a particular topic, to the extent يظن أن هذا هو الحق, and so he regards this as being the truth, فهذا معذور لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا اجتهد الحاكم فأصاب فله أجران وإن اجتهد فأخطأ فله أجر واحد. And so if the hakim strives to reach the truth, embarks upon research and the ijtihad, and so the scholar or the judge strives to make a particular ruling, and is correct in that, then he has 2 rewards. And if he strives and is incorrect, he has 1 reward. وهذا في المسائل الاجتهادية. This is in relation to the masail of ijtihad. This is in relation to the masail of ijtihad. So, a person can say that an individual may receive 2 rewards, or a person may receive 1 reward. 2 rewards, why?
Ijtihad is correct.
The 1 reward for the ijtihad, so 1 reward for the bahth, for the research, and his striving to reach the truth. 1 reward for that. And another reward due to the fact that he actually attained the truth. Then you have the one where he says or the one that receives one reward. He receives that one reward, why?
It's true.
Because he's... Now, ijtihad. So you see, the one reward of judging is ijtihad. Lakin, la yusib. He wasn't correct. So he didn't receive the second reward for being correct. But you see the reward for striving and researching to reach that truth. So he's rewarded for that. Upon this point here, I think it's important to ask quite a question. There's something which is mentioned a lot. And there's something which is mentioned when it comes to the affair of al-jarh wa ta'deel. Yani the science when it comes to disparagement and praising. And an individual will say that we don't have to accept this jarh, for example, this disparagement upon fulan, because it's just his ijtihad. It's just an ijtihad of a particular scholar. So let's say, for example, you have the individuals that say in an affair of Ali Hassan al-Halabi, anyone that knows him. Ali Hassan al-Halabi. That Shaykh Rabi' mentioned him and spoke about him. وَبَدَّعَهُ. Described him as a mubtada. I mentioned his errors in detail. However, another individual will say that we do not have to accept this tabdir because this is just the ijtihad of the Shaykh. We don't have to accept it because it's ijtihad. And so, it's possible that he's incorrect. And if he's incorrect, alhamdulillah, he has one ajr. Is this particular line of thinking and line of speaking correct? And if it is, why is it correct? And if it's not, why is it incorrect? Is the question clear? No. If it relates to aqīdah. If it relates to aqīdah, essentially, in a manner, yes, but something more than that, though.
It's a jarh mufassar.
It's a jarh mufassar.
So the Shaykh didn't just bring out a thing and the Shaykh brought proofs and evidences.
Well, how can you not say it's ijtihad?
Because he brought the proofs and evidences.
There's something ijtihad that bring proof and evidence? Sahih? The question is now.
أعتقد أنه اجتهد ودعم السيادة بالدليل وأصاب.
فاجتهد
ودعم الاجتهاد بتاعه بالدليل.
أتى بالدليل فأصاب.
هذا هو جواب.
فالدخول يعني الجرح هو في فلان.
كان على بينة، كان على قرائن.
القرائن هذا أقرب. He said he had surrounding factors, and this is why he was using surrounding factors. The answer is closer. So a lot of blank faces. A lot of silly faces that are ready to give me the answer.
Is it because others would have agreed with him?
Others would have agreed with him.
It's
Because
not,
it's based upon the
Getting closer.
it's not a condition for every single alim to make a jarh upon a person in order for him to become mubtadi'.
That's absolutely true, but we're getting further away from the answer. No.
The Shaykh took the statements of Ali Hassan al-Halabi and he proved how his statements contradicts the Quran and the Sunnah.
No.
So with that he criticized him for opposing the Quran and the Sunnah,
No.
using the examples of Ali Hassan al-Halabi's mukhalafat of the Sunnah.
No.
And in that case his ijtihad was correct based upon that.
So it's
And therefore obviously if the evidence is presented you have to accept it.
MashaAllah. He was right there and then the last bit at the end. Right at the end. Yani, sah, ahsant. The reality is he brought all of the evidences. So the affair of Jarh wa Ta'deel aslan is not an affair of ijtihad. It's not an affair of ijtihad. Naam. So essentially those that seek to mention this abab of Jarh wa Ta'deel, they try to enter into the bab of ijtihad so that they can essentially reject certain aqwal. Just as, for example, when it comes to fiqh, you can accept aqwal, you can reject aqwal. because it's fiqh. So for example, if a person says, I'm upon this opinion where you raise your hands, or you raise your hands after in the takbirat. Another person says, you don't raise your hands in takbirat, and I have my evidence, you have your evidence. That there's a degree of tasamuh, there's a degree of allowance between each person. So they want to make this part of that. Does that make sense? So the first thing is that it's not ijtihad, masail ijtihadiyya. It's not an affair of ijtihad, where a person looks at the evidence and he comes to a conclusion using this and using that, using the tools, as a person will make ijtihad. Rather, the person identifies batil, if the person identifies the batil, and he clarifies the batil. So it's an affair of hujjaj, and the person bringing proofs, as a lot of brothers mentioned the dalil. It's an affair of adillah. So this is the clear difference. That if a person now says, for example, that fulan, Zayd min al-nas, okay, Zayd, he doesn't attend the Salatul Jama'ah. He doesn't attend the Salatul Jama'ah. And I know this about Zayd. And I say this about Zayd. Now, this is a clear evidence that is mentioned about this individual. Jarhan. Now, it's not a case of a person has to do ijtihad in that regard. Or does he attend the Salah? Does he not attend the Salah? If he doesn't attend the Salah, he doesn't attend the Salah. And if a person mentions that with evidence, then it's a reality. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's about the mentioning of the realities of individuals. And it's not a case of ijtihad that. So when now, as Jabir mentioned, you have the mentioning of the mukhalafat. We mentioned Ali Hassan as an example. His mukhalafat, his opposition to the truth. These are things that he said, and this is how he opposes the truth. How he said these things. So he opposes the truth. It's not ijtihad. Naam. So it's important that you don't allow for individuals to enter this into that. And make this affair of Jahl Ta'dil one where it is treated as if it's fiqh. Naam. Because essentially as well, when it comes to the Radd al-Mukhalif, when it comes to the refutation of the one that is opposed to truth, then, no doubt, it's going to be going back, it's going to be an affair that goes back to the usul. This was the one of the first things mentioned. It goes back to the aqīdah. This is the aqīdah of al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. This is what so-and-so said. This is how it opposes the aqīdah of al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Now, does it make sense? And so it's not a case of where a person can say, this is the evidence, and based on this evidence, this is how I understand this evidence to be. It's not based upon our own understanding, or our own perception of it, or the own tools that we use to understand it. Rather, if we're talking about what the division between haqq and batil, then it's what is mentioned in that regard. Now, does that make sense? And so from the practice of a lot of the people is that they will say that, no, for example, Shaykh Fulan said this, and rather than seeking not to make tanaqqus of the Shaykh, but still trying to defend the individual that's mardud, still trying to defend the individual that has been spoken about, or that's majruh, that's been criticized, in order to defend them, they'll say, but that statement is ijtihad. Now, but there's no ijtihad in the affair altogether. It's hujjaj. It's dalil. Now, likewise, when a person says that you are just following Shaykh Fulan, you're making taqleed of a particular Shaykh. They've said this many times, especially about Shaykh Rabi', that the individuals are making taqleed of the Shaykh. They're blindly following the Shaykh. If the person has understood the Shaykh has brought this evidence, and he understands the evidence of the Shaykh, there's no taqleed in that regard. He's following the hujjah. He's following the evidence. As is mentioned by Shaykh Muqbil, raḥimahullāh. As the individual has followed the evidence. Wallahu a'lam. Make sense of it. It's important that we understand that particular mas'ala. Why? Because it's something that is mentioned on many an occasion. On many occasions we will mention this to try and belittle a particular criticism. Now, along with that as well, Shaykh Fawzān mentions this or expands upon this. He mentions that this particular adoration in relation to the Hakim, the one that receives 2 rewards, the one that receives 1 reward. This is the Masail Ijtihadiyya. But it's in the Masail where there is room for Ijtihad. أما المسائل التوقيفية وهي الأمور العقيدة فليس لأحد أن يجتهد فيها. As for the affairs of Aqīdah, now the affairs of Tawqifiyya, where there's affairs that are absolute, the Aqīdah, the Usul, there is no room for Ijtihad. So a person cannot now say that I've done my Ijtihad and I am going to reject these attributes of Allah Ta'ala, for example. Or I've done my Ijtihad and I'm only going to accept the thiqah of these from the companions, for example. No, rather, the affair and the usul, when it comes to al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, are one and is absolute. And so a person cannot accept this or that. Now let's accept the absolute truth. The truth is one. Now, and so the Shaykh goes on to mention, بل الواجب اتباع الدليل ولا مجال فيها للاجتهاد. And so what is wajib, was an obligation, is that person follows the dalil. The person follows the proofs. And there's no room, and there's no room for ijtihad. The person saying, I'm going to do ijtihad in this regard. Now, likewise, thereafter, the Shaykh mentions, وَلَا فِي هُدًى تَرَكَهُ حَسِبَهُ ضَلَالَةً. And likewise, in relation to guidance, the person does not have an excuse of leaving off an affair of guidance, an affair of haqq, because he regards it as being misguidance. لَيْسَ الْعَمَلُ عَلَى الْحِسْبَانِ وَالظَّنِّ. Now, so it's not an affair of how a person perceives it or what a person thinks. It's not about what you think it is. Na'am. So, just because a person thinks that something is guidance, فَيَأْخُذُ الضَّلَالَ مثلا, he takes misguidance because he perceives it to be guidance. Or يَتْرَكُ الْحَقِّ يَظُنُّهُ ضَلَالَ, or he leaves off the truth. Because he believes it to be dalala, because he believes it to be misguidance. Na'am, as mentioned previously, ظَنُّهُ لَا يَشْفَعْ لَهُ. His perception will not intercede for him. لأن الهدى والضلال قد بينهم الله في القرآن. Because that which is guidance and that which is misguidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clarified that which is in the Quran. وبينها الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم في السنة. And that the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم has clarified that within the Sunnah. وبينهما السلف في سيرتهم وعقيدتهم فالحق واضح ولله الحمد. And so you find that the Salaf have clarified the truth in their seerah and their aqidah, and so the haqq is clear. What is meant by they've clarified it in their seerah? And the seerah, how is the haqq clarified in the seerah of the Salaf? How is the haqq clarified when it comes to the seerah of the Salaf? The mawaqif when it comes to fitan. Now, what else? Let's say that's their actions, their mawaqif, the position they took in times of fitan. What else?
Statements that are narrated by them.
Statements that are narrated by them. Because their statements are reflections upon their perception of the nusus. And their faham of the nusus. So when they understand the text to be a particular way, then they will make that statement in that regard. They will make the statement in regards to those texts. So when you hear, for example, the narrations about the mu'amala of Ahlul Bid'ah, how they deal with Ahlul Bid'ah, how they treat Ahlul Bid'ah, and the people of innovation, all of that is a reflection upon their understanding of nusus when it comes to the Kitab and the Sunnah, and what we understand bid'ah to be, innovation to be, and its people to be. So it's a reflection of that. And so no doubt within that is a clarification of the truth. So the haqq is wadih. Now, And so, alhamdulillah, the truth is absolutely clear. And it's from the rahmah of Allah, from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the truth is clear from the kitab and the sunnah. وهدي السلف الصالح ليس فيه غموض. And so, the guidance of the Salaf al-Salih, you don't find that there's anything within it which is concealed or hidden. Where there's a degree of ambiguity. Without lips. And there's not something which is deceptive. Or a person is not able to decipher between the two, between the haqq and the batil. Now, كما حصل للأمم السابقة لما طال عليهم العمد والالتبس عليهم الحق خلفت الكتب وغيرت. And so, as for the previous nations though, that you find, is that you find that this deception occurred. Deception occurred, and deception in relation to the truth. What the truth was. And the books were changed. And the books had been, now, you find that there was some deception in relation to the books of the previous nations. As for this ummah, يبقى واضحا والكتاب والسنة محفوظان من تحريف وتغيير فليس لأحد العذر حينئذ. As for our ummah, then we have the kitab and the sunnah, and both of them are wadih, and none of them have been distorted or changed over the years. This is from the rahmah of Allah. The kitab and the sunnah have been preserved. Na'am. How are the means that the kitab and the sunnah has been preserved? From the most obvious of them. How is it preserved? By its riwayah. By riwayah, the chain of narration. Now, by way of riwayah, that has been preserved in this regard. And this is from the mazai of this ummah. And from distinguishing factors that this ummah have, is that these things have been preserved, and these chains have been preserved, and the likes of that. What we have here as well, barakallahu feekum, is something which is, as we mentioned, significant for this ummah, and is the case when it comes to both of the wahyayn, when it comes to the book and the sunnah. They've been preserved by way of the riwayah. Now, thereafter, Barbahārī, when he mentions فَقَدْ بُيِّنَتْ الْأُمُورِ, the affairs have become clear. نعم قد بُيِّنَتْ الْأُمُورِ لكنها تحتاج إلى بحث وإلى طلب. So the affairs have become clear. Alhamdulillah. نعم, the book and the sunnah is clear. However, تحتاج إلى بحث وطلب. However, there's a need for bahth, there's a need for research and seeking of knowledge. So it's a case that the truth is there. For the one that wants it, the truth is there. Naam. However, what is upon the individual is talab al-ilm. What is upon the individual that he seeks knowledge. What is upon the individual is that he goes out of his way to come to an understanding of the haqq. Now that's what's upon him as an individual. Now يتعلم الإنسان ويتفقه. That a person comes to learn and comes to an understanding. يأخذ العلم عن العلماء. He takes the knowledge from the ulama. لا يأخذ العلم عن نفسه. He doesn't take knowledge from himself. He doesn't take knowledge from himself. أو عن مثله من الجهال أو متعالمين. He doesn't take knowledge from himself or from those that are the muta'alimin. I don't know what a muta'alim is. Muta'alim. Pretender to knowledge. A muta'alim, individual that believes he has knowledge, but he doesn't have knowledge. نعم أو من الكتب بل يأخذ العلم عن أهله. So it doesn't just take the knowledge from the books as well. This is the distinction. So a person must seek knowledge. But he must seek knowledge from his people, from the head of the ulama. He does not take knowledge from those that are like him from the juhal. There's no doubt this is prevalent now. A person seeks to disseminate knowledge, and it's not knowledge. However, that which is disseminated in reality is whatever he feels to say. Naam, whatever he feels comfortable in saying, and whether he ascribes it to Islam, then he will ascribe it to Islam. However, he will disseminate that in a manner that he feels comfortable with. What I mean by that is that you find that many individuals that are du'at when it comes to social media. Naam. It's not about the person being qualified to disseminate knowledge. When I say qualified, doesn't mean that the person has to have a certificate. When we say qualified, that the person has sat with people of knowledge, that the person has benefited from the people of knowledge, that is taken from the books of the people of knowledge. Not that the person has opened a YouTube channel, or the person has opened a Twitter account, or an Instagram account, or whatever social media platform account, and they are quirky enough that they attain enough followers. They haven't attained followers by way of ilm, but they may obtain followers by way of being, as I said, quirky, different. They grab their attention. And we live in a society, we live in a time where attention spans are getting less and less and less and less. Before, the people used to read volumes of books. They used to read books. They used to read one volume. They used to read articles. They used to read tweets. They had to watch videos. Now they have to watch shorts. Now it's less and less and less and less. And so in a time like that, and in a society like that, the one that grabs the people's attention, these are the ones that the people become grounded to, or become attracted towards. Not attracted towards them by way of the ilm, but attracted towards them because they grab their attention. So now when we're talking about the one that is qualified to disseminate knowledge, now it should be the individual that has benefited in the regard of sitting with the scholars, benefited from the scholars, that can pass on whatever they've learned from the scholars to the people. But not just that a person has the ability to make a username and a password, which has been boiled down to this time. So now a person cannot, again, going back to the central point, the person cannot say that they have an udhr, that they have an excuse. Because the Kitab and the Sunnah have been made clear. The reality is that the Kitab and the Sunnah have been made clear, but the person has to seek it out themselves. They have to make talab of that ilm. They have to strive in order to seek knowledge. And seek knowledge from the ulama. Seek knowledge from the people of knowledge. And those that are qualified to disseminate true knowledge. And so, what you find, that the people, they may go to those that are juhal like them. The reality is you go to a person and he's just talking, speaking about Allah and his religion without any knowledge. Just narrating. So the person may go to that one, the jahil like himself. Or, as mentioned, that the person, he goes to the one that's muta'alim. He's jahil, and he pretends he has knowledge. Now, so his focus is not about the dissemination of knowledge. His tarqeez is not about, I have some knowledge, I want to pass it on to someone else. What I've learned, I want to pass it on to someone else. His tarqeez, his concentration, and his focus is upon maintaining the surah, maintaining the image that he has knowledge. He's muta'alim. He's a pretender to knowledge. He doesn't actually perceive, but he doesn't actually have knowledge. And so he cannot focus upon disseminating knowledge. He doesn't have it. فَعَقِدُ الشَّيْء لَا يُعْتِي. Now, the one that does not have something, he cannot give that which does not possess. So his focus is about perceiving or keeping that perception, keeping that image of a learned person. Likewise as well, you have the individual. Now, you have the individual that will take knowledge from himself, what he believes to be correct. We mentioned a bit this earlier. And you have the individual that takes the knowledge from the kutub, from the books. He's engaged in the books. No doubt, the one that reads books, this is something which is praiseworthy. Ahlul Ilm, they have authored many books. The people that author many books in order for the people to benefit from that ilm. Naam. However, this is not what the Talib al-Ilm should rely upon in totality. And the Talib al-Ilm strives to sit with the people of knowledge, strives to sit with the scholars, strives to sit with the Tulab al-Ilm that benefited from the scholars. And he doesn't make his Talib one of the books. Now, does anyone know what the terminology for the individual that's really seeks knowledge with books? The Suḥfi. And the Suḥfi. As an individual that he's engaged with the pages. And so he may say that an individual, he may come to a particular understanding of affairs, but however, because he's only relying upon the books, and he's not reading the books with the scholars, he doesn't have the understanding of the scholars when it comes to reading the books. And so his understanding goes back to who? Himself. That understanding is an understanding that he's relying upon himself. And so, if he's only relying upon his own understanding, قد يكون, it's possible that his faham is qasid. His faham is deficient. There's naqs in his faham. There's deficient in his understanding. And so it's a must that not only does he benefit from books, but he benefits from reading those books to the people of knowledge as well. Now, and that's because this knowledge is taken from the ulama. فالعلم بالتلقي وليس بأخذ من الكتب. So ilm is بالتلقي, يعني by way of dissemination. Now this is how the ilm is taken. From the time of the Prophet ﷺ with his companions all the way to now. This is how it is disseminated knowledge. By talaqi, by way of speaking. By way of it being disseminated from the shaykh to the people. From the talib, or from the shaykh to his tulab. From the shaykh to the rawat. To the shaykh to the narrators. Now, as for the books, إنما هي أدوات فقط. As for the books, that they are adwat. The books are merely tools for that. So the books are tools for us to gain knowledge. The adwat al-bahr. They're tools in order for us to do research. When we research a particular mas'ala, we go to the books. We open this book, we open that book to understand the particular mas'ala. As for the Sharḥ, the explanation of what is found within the books, then that is by way of the ulama. And so as for when it comes to reaching the truth, then it's taken from Ahlul Ilm. And it is the Khalaf, the generation that came after the Salaf, they narrate from the Salaf. So this ilm is by talaqi, and narrating and the dissemination like this. The final point mentioned here is in relation to وَثَبَتَتِ الْحُجَّةِ وَانْقَطَعَتِ الْعُذْرِ. انقطع العذر. And so the hujjah is established whilst you have the excuse is cut off. Why? Because we have the truth has been clarified. فما لأحد عذر فهذا الدين صانه الله بتحريف وتغيير. And so no one has an excuse, a reality, because Allah Ta'ala has preserved this deen and He's maintained this deen from it being distorted or from any change. وصار الحق واضحا لا لبس فيه. And this religion is one which is واضح, it's clear, and there's no deception in relation to it. بخلاف الأمم السابقة, يعني, as opposed to the previous nations that have come before. فإنها لما طال عليها الأمد حرفوا كتبهم وغيروها وبدلوها فالتبس الحق وخفيا. As for the previous nations, then once the time went on further, now once further time elapsed, then what you found is that they would seek to distort the books, change the books, now, and replace certain parts of their books for others. And so now there was deception when it comes to the truth. Now this truth became disguised, and it became hidden. The truth became disguised and it became hidden. Now, inshallah, I think we'll conclude here, inshallah. We'll conclude at this part here. And go on to the next point that was read. I think part of it was read earlier. But we'll go on to the next point in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala. Which is the point, ذلك أن السنة والجماعة قد أحكما نعم أمر الدين كله. نعم. طيب. جزاكم الله خير يا إخوان. بارك الله فيكم. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but before, I have a quick question. It's a recap, really. But I really want to make sure that that point is understood. The point in relation to ijtihad. The point in relation to ijtihad, barakallahu feekum, is that what do we say in response if a person says the ijtihad, and this ijtihad, or this jarh of the shaykh rather, is his ijtihad. So we can accept it or we can reject it. This is ijtihad, so we can accept or we can reject. What do we say in response to that? The jarh wa ta'deel, first of all, is not a mas'ala ijtihadiyya. Naam, that's the first thing. Secondly, why?
Based upon haqa'iq.
It's based upon the haqa'iq, the realities and
the proofs.
falsehoods and adillah. It's based upon adillah, يعني adillah which is qat'i. Naam, and generally speaking, when we're talking about the affairs of jarh wa ta'deel, or radd al-makhalif, yani refuting the one that opposes, then we're going to be speaking in affairs of what? The usul. We're going to be speaking about the affairs of the usul. And the usul, there is no ijtihad in the usul. Rather, ijtihad occurs when? Masail fiqhiyya, yani the furu'. Now, Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Jazakumullah khairan. صلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Ustādh?
No.
I think so. The excuse, there's only one possible excuse that we can make for our brother or sister, and that is that the truth didn't reach them.
No, the proper excuse is that the truth didn't reach them, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's question.
Basically, I wanted to ask, like, do we apply that to absolutely everyone then?
When we say the truth didn't reach them, what we understand from that is that the truth didn't reach them and there was no means for them to attain that truth. Naam. if the person, for example, farrat, yani, so he was negligent when it came to seeking that truth, then we do not apply that to them. So, for example, a person had the ability to seek knowledge, but he didn't seek the knowledge. We're not going to now say that this person, lahu udhr, he has that excuse because the truth didn't reach him. Truth didn't reach him because he didn't seek it. No.
So, like, generally speaking, we can only really apply that to very few, especially in our time now then.
Especially in our time, where the truth is widespread, and means of attaining that truth is widespread, and means of travelling to Ahlul Ilm are a lot easier. Now, especially as well for ourselves, let's say, that live here in the West, where we are able to gain enough funds, we're able to travel to people's knowledge. Maybe another scenario, a person lives in a location or lives in an economic situation where they're not able to travel, or they have to save for years to travel for a month. This happens. You hear about, for example, the people when they would have to save for years, people that live in villages in some of these countries, and they save for years in order to do Hajj. Now, so it is dependent. So we wouldn't just say about time, but it's all about location as well. And if a person in their location, it allows for them, or their circumstance allows for them to seek more knowledge, then of course, once you have more means to seek knowledge, then your excuse becomes less and less, or your means of makhraj to have that excuse becomes less and less.
Now, say for example, the truth, alhamdulillah, has been made clear, but like, let's say there's someone on YouTube, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe the issue that they're incorrect in has been made clear, but it hasn't been made clear specific to them. Is that the same, or does what?
It hasn't been made clear to them.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's all about specifics or specific scenarios. So if the person has made an error, right, but this error can clarify somewhere else. If that clarity hasn't reached them, it hasn't reached them. However, then it goes back to them as an individual. Have they taken the means in order to attain that clarity? Now, have they taken that means in order, have they gone to seek the scholars and attain that clarity? Wow.
And finally, Ustādh, for example, right, I was on Winslow Road a couple of weeks ago, just went for food with some brothers, and you know, obviously you scroll on YouTube sometimes, you might recognise someone by face even though I never listened to them. I just, usually if I see someone preaching on YouTube, I just skip it, you know, because I don't know them.
Yeah.
So I saw that person, like, and basically, I, for example, know that in this situation I didn't, right? But it was made clear to me that he's defo an innovator.
Right.
If I didn't know it specifically, like, for example, a scholar refuting him, but I knew in this matter that is defo wrong, should I stay quiet, meaning, or are you still supposed to say, like, you're supposed to warn against him, basically? Or do you have to wait for the seniors?
Okay, so...
Because basically, some other brothers there were like, oh yeah, let's say something. And I was just like, don't even interact with this guy.
Are they wanted to say something to him?
Yeah.
Like, to correct him? Or
I think they were just being boys, you know, boys are being boys kind of thing.
Okay.
But I was just like, just don't interact, like, leave it.
Yeah, no, if the person is... So first and foremost, to remember that the asl is not Salafiyah, right? The asl of a person is not Salafiyah. The asl of a person is they're Muslim. If the person says he's Muslim, accept that from him, he's Muslim. As for Salafiyah, this is a wasful zaid, this is an additional ascription, if you like, right? Where a person is understood that they adhere to the manhaj of Salaf, they adhere to the book of the Sunnah, they understand, they take from the understanding of the Salaf of this ummah, now, and they strive in that regard in all of their affairs. Okay? Now, if now it's understood that the person has fallen into error, first and foremost, then there may not even need to be a discussion about whether he's Salafi or not, because maybe he was never Salafi in the first place. So it's not about a discussion whether he was upon the haqq or not, because it's never been known to be upon the truth. Now, and that which is known from him was that he was upon batil. One discussion about that, going back to the asl being Salafiyya, is what was mentioned in regards to Ibn Hibban in his book Thiqat. And Ibn Hibban, basically, in his book Thiqat, is a book where he mentions all of those narrators in regards to being trustworthy, right?
Untrustworthy.
Trustworthy. But he mentions them in the context that upon the principle that if there's no jarh upon an individual, then he's trustworthy. Now, so many scholars, they mention that this is incorrect understanding, because not only do you need there to be no what's the word I'm looking for? No jarh, no
Verdict.
what's the word for jarh?
Criticism.
Sorry. That there's no criticism upon an individual. Not only do you need that, also you need praise for a person to know that they're trustworthy, right? So many scholars from them, in Shaykh Ṣāliḥ mentions that the asl of mankind is al-jahala, is that they don't know. The asl of mankind is that we don't know them. They're Muslim, we can accept they're Muslim, but anything more than that we don't know. So now, if the asl is that we don't know, and then what we do come to know is that he's deviated, right? Then that's what we understand from them. Now, if this person is a caller to deviation, right? Then, generally speaking, there wouldn't be any need to speak to them or approach them unless there's any sort of surrounding factor where you would assume or you would hope that they would listen to what you have to say. But if now you find that it's an individual, what is generally the case, if a person is upon batil and they're firm upon that batil, then they will suffice with being upon that batil. They will be comfortable upon that way. And so it's generally of no benefit to go and approach them and say that, we want to speak to you about this harm that you fall into, that opposition to truth that you fall into, or how you've opposed the truth anyway. Because the reality is that they've opposed and they are callers to that opposition as well. So you leave it to those that may be more qualified, or those that are more qualified to assess whether there's any need to address them in the first place. As for you now affirming that the person's from batil, because if this is what a person has made clear upon himself. And it's not for you to wait for anyone else to say so. As if it's made clear that they're upon batil, and there's no indication that they were ever upon the truth in that regard.
Okay. So basically, like a safe statement would be say, like, I don't know him to be from the Salafi, basically. Or
safe statement is not from the Salafi. That's safe as well. Because he's not. If it's a case of nothing's been mentioned, there's nothing from praise or anything praiseworthy in terms of Salafiyya from him, but then what we do see is batil, then it's not from the Salafi. No. Barakallahu feek. Jazakumullah khair. صلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.